everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of Creatives on the Couch, the podcast for creative professionals everywhere. We're part of the Creatives Group, which is a safe space for people in the creative industries to come together, connect with each other, learn and grow and develop their creative businesses. So that's what we're all about. We hope you enjoy this episode. I am going to pass you over to my co-host, Julie, who is going to tell you all about our first guest. Over to you, Julie.
And our first guest is a very exciting first guest, Antuan Magic Raimone. He has 20 years experience in musical theatre. He is the first male universal swing for 5 US companies of Hamilton, the musical Hamilton. And our first question, Antuan, is what is the universal swing?
That is a great question that many people ask. Thank you for being for the invitation to be a guest here. I'm excited for this conversation today. So a universal swing is someone who covers the male or female dancing chorus ensemble in a musical. And they do that for all existing touring companies of one particular musical. So Hamilton has 5 US companies of their production, and they are all on a union contract. That's also very important information because some tours or some productions have non-union touring companies, and a universal swing would not be able to work on those tours because of the union affiliation. And so what that means is I cover the 6 male ensemble members for the show, and I can be sent to any one of 5 productions across the United States to fill in for any one of those 6 people.
Wow, so you do a lot of traveling.
Yes, I have for sure.
So what roles do you actually fill in the musical itself? You said 6 roles?
Yes. And so I primarily cover the male dancers, and each of them has a feature, a character feature. So you might know the character names of Charles Lee, Samuel Seabury, James Reynolds, George Eaker, the Doctor. And so each of those individual features either has a singing solo or some sort of dialogue that exists within the show. So I have to know those specific parts as well as the larger portion of the show, which is their choreography, everything they sing, their costume changes, their set moves, all of those things.
That's quite a lot to take in, isn't it?
Yeah. It is a lot of information, yes.
How many costume changes are there, Raimone?
Oh, goodness. That's great. So we have a base costume that we call our parchment, and it's sort of a very soft tan. And then we will add coats, capes, hats, neck pieces, glasses. So each of those can be considered a costume change. So the role of James Reynolds that I play, he is he blackmails Hamilton after his wife sleeps with Hamilton. And so James Reynolds probably has, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think, a minimum of 12 costume changes throughout the show, probably more. That's probably a very low estimate.
Wow.
And that's just one character. And
that's just one character. Yes.
Oh my word.
So Antuan, I mean, that's amazing. How did you get into musical theatre? Is musical theatre really your passion? How did you get into musical theatre?
Well, for me, it started, I've always loved to sing and dance. And that was something I was just doing in life in general. When I was a young boy and attending church, I was in our church choir. And then once a school choir became available, I joined the school choir. And it wasn't until high school for me, or secondary school, for those in the UK, was when I actually was introduced to musical theater itself, because my high school had a performing arts center built onto it. And the theater teacher would put together a big musical every spring. The sets were designed by our shop teacher. The band was in our orchestra. She had a friend of hers that would come and choreograph the shows. And we would actually sell tickets to our community, and they would come and see us perform every spring. And that's when I first got into musical theater specifically.
But you were very lucky then that your school had such a thing. How would you, what would you recommend people do, or young people do, that wish to break into the musical theatre world, that don't have that?
I would say look in the towns you live in, the cities you live in, and see if there are any local theaters that are available. Because what I also learned after doing, or while I was early on doing theater in high school, was there was a theater scene. I just didn't know about it because I grew up in a single parent household and my mother was working a lot. And her responsibility was to make sure we had a place to live and food to eat and clothes on our back. So she didn't have the time to necessarily help me discover what my interests were. So, but there were a lot of local theaters that I eventually found existed, and just, check online. And that's the wonderful thing about having the internet as a resource. It just brings the information to you. So look and see, like type in, local theater, community theater, theater near me, find those resources, see what that is, and then start making phone calls or have your parents make phone calls and see when these places are having auditions or if they offer intensive programs that you can go and learn and start training and do things like that.
Here in the UK, we have weekend Amdram schools, don't we, Melanie? And we also have a lot of amateur dramatic societies across the country. Do you have that in the US as well?
I think we have our version of that, yes. And for me, professionally, I got into it, I guess, early. I guess it depends on who you talk to. So my first professional job, I was about 16 or 17 years old. And there was a theater in my hometown, a very large outdoor amphitheater, and they held auditions. And my theater teacher managed for them to come to our high school to have auditions for her students. And initially, I didn't get cast in anything, but then they were adding more kids to a production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And so I got added in the kids chorus. I wasn't getting paid, but it was an incredible experience. I got to work with professionals, and I had also applied for an internship at that same theater. I did not initially get the internship, but later in the season, the individual that they had hired, they quit the internship. So they called me and offered me the position. And I said yes. So that was very fortunate to have that experience, to know like, oh, okay, this thing is here and this is something that I can do here. So that was very, very fortunate for me.
I think that's really good advice, Antoine, is to keep going and just see what opportunities are out there, because you just never know, do you, if you get involved with an amateur group, or you put your name down, even if you don't get chosen the first time, you never know how things can change. So if you make sure that your face is known or your voice is known, you never know when you're going to get a call that may be unexpected.
It's very true. And I've said many, many times, if you do not show up to the audition, you are guaranteed you will not get the job. Like it's 100% that you will not get the job if you don't show up. But if you show up, there's a 50-50 chance.
So what made you show up? What drove you towards the theatre, and particularly musical theatre? What put you there? What made you go to that audition?
I say, and I believe that it was the path I was always meant to take. I just didn't know it was an option for me. So as I mentioned before, I grew up in a single parent household mostly, and I knew I loved to dance. I knew I loved to sing. And the only people that I saw that looked like me, meaning like other brown skinned people, were in music videos. Because the musicals that I watched growing up, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Oklahoma, Carousel, things of that nature, I didn't see a lot of people of color in those musicals. And not to say that I knew I loved what I saw and I wanted to do it, but I had no idea how to get to that thing. And watching music videos growing up as a child, I was really drawn to Janet Jackson, and I wanted to be a backup dancer for her. So that was my first performance dream and goal, was to be a backup dancer for her. It just so happens that by the time I got to secondary / high school, there was a theater a performing arts center in my high school. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the thing. I can sing and act and dance in this one space. And so that just opened up every other door that followed for me.
And did you ever manage to get into a video with Janet Jackson?
Not yet. She hasn't. I don't think she's completely retired yet. But who knows? Maybe one of the if I see an audition notice, I'll have the guts to just go and just to say that I did it.
Absolutely.
It's always hope.
They never.
Always hope.
Absolutely. Antoine, I mean, that's amazing. And I think it, when you've got a calling, it says you always knew that you had to sing, you had to dance. And I think you do have to follow that calling, don't you, wherever that takes you. And you're absolutely right with the internet today, at least for kids or even adults. I mean, some people change their careers when they're older. They suddenly find courage that they never knew they had and switch careers and seek out things like amateur dramatics or theatre groups. And thank goodness for the internet now that there are resources that people can find what is local to them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It really is. It's so helpful and useful now. And I can understand the fear that is involved in changing careers, because I'm in the process of doing that actually myself, and we can speak to that more later. So I understand the fear that's involved in that, but I watched my mother work, the career she had, she retired from, and she worked her way up the ladder with a high school graduation. She did not go to college. And she was very good at the job she did and very underappreciated at the work she did. And I saw that struggle for her, and I saw how much pain and frustration that brought her. And in seeing that, I made a promise to myself that whatever work I chose to do, whatever career I chose to be in, if I did not feel a sense of connection and drive and energy with that thing, then I wouldn't do it. And I understood that could be deemed as very risky, even naive. But also, I just had to have faith and trust that the gifts and the abilities that I possess that were given to me and that I've even learned were meant to be used in a specific way. And it has worked very well for me. But I went into this career understanding the hardships and the struggles that would exist in it. I didn't go in thinking, I'm going to audition and I'll get every job I get. I knew the reality of that. And with that, I still made the choice to keep moving forward.
Mm.
Well, it's wonderful when a job is actually a joy, and especially for creative people who can die inside if they're not in the right niche, so to speak.
Very true.
Did you have any opposition on your career from anybody, Antoine, when you first started going down the route of musical theatre? Did your mother want you to be someone else or have a steady job, or did she really understand that you needed to follow your passion? Did you have anybody trying to tell you, oh, you shouldn't do that because it's not a safe career?
She definitely voiced her concerns, and she never stood in the way. She just said, this is a hard business. I have two older sisters that are also singers. Like, they have sung in their life and danced in their lives. One of them, she was in the music industry, I'd say maybe almost 10 years, like really going at it. She was a professional model before that. Mm-hmm. So my mother had some idea of the entertainment business because of that older sister. But there was also something in my mother where she just knew that she needed to support her kids. And if and when she didn't know how to guide us, she would share with us the knowledge she had. and then just kind of keep an eye out and see like, okay, who is talking to you, who's offering you help, vetting them, having her own conversations with them that I've probably never been aware of. Mothers being mothers and taking care of their children. But no, she was never an obstacle to what I wanted to do, even as she expressed her concerns. Her main concern was that we were able to take care of ourselves financially, basically, so we didn't have to ask her for money because she was doing the best she could to take care of herself.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful. She sounds like a wonderful, wonderful woman, because it must have been hard for her to see her children think, oh, the career is, it's not the most stable. But obviously, as you say, she has her own struggles. She obviously wouldn't have wanted you to go down that same struggle of doing something that left you feeling undervalued and underappreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she has continued to be such a support. And my father was as well. He has since passed away, but he was also a great support in all of this. He was a lover of music. He had a day job, but his passion was music as well. And so he would DJ for parties and weddings, and he owned hundreds and hundreds of vinyls over the course of my life. And so him understanding my love and passion for music in a different way than his was a wonderful bond for us. And my mother would see every show I did. If she could drive within 4 hours to see the show, she was there. Once it got out of that 4-hour window, then understandably she wasn't there. But prior to that, she was at every show she could be at.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And obviously a musical family. You and your sisters obviously inherited those genes from your dad. And I suppose if your mom's musical too, is she?
Yeah, she does. She has sang in the church choir for years. So it's just been a wonderful thing that just kind of fits within us. And, when we're together, it's not that we necessarily have sing-alongs, but if we're in the car and if we know a song, we're singing it together, or we're dancing while we're cooking, or it's been really nice to have all that connected as a family.
With regards to Hamilton, obviously it's a musical that is very popular. It's won lots of awards, and seems like it's probably going to go on for quite a few years. But say, for argument's sake, it suddenly closes down. Boom. What do you do then? You need to find another musical? How do you go about finding another job?
Well, I'm at a very different place in my career now than, say, even 10 years ago. And I have a passion, and there's also a purpose in public speaking for me. And it's something I've been doing here and there the last decade or so. I gave my first TEDx talk in 2018. I've given a lot of talks around advocacy work for survivors and victims of sexual violence. And I also want to speak to theater education, specifically the education of professionals in theater that could be swings. So, Hamilton is my second Broadway show. My first Broadway show was with In the Heights, also written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I was a vacation swing for In the Heights. And a vacation swing is someone who comes in, they still cover the male and or female dancing chorus, but they only do so if someone's on vacation or if they have a scheduled leave of absence from the show. And you're only getting paid the time in which they need you at the theater. Now, as a universal swing, I am on a full 6-month to 1 year contract, whereas with a vacation swing, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, hopefully longer. But with all the experience I've gained as a swing in its various forms, I recognize and have seen that so many of my colleagues and friends who have been swings, none of us have any formal training because there is none in existence in the current educational system. And that is doing a massive disservice to the entertainment business, specifically within theater, because the professionals and those of us who have the skill set and the abilities and temperaments to do this job aren't being trained to do it. We don't know it's a viable and valuable form of employment and security. And what happens with that is you get people that come in who don't know what the job is, aren't sure how to do it, and what the emotional and mental tolls are. And then they get burnt out, and they might do 6 months, they might do a year, and then they're gone. And so the thousands of dollars and time that's invested in that single person gets taken away, and that the show has to start all over again. And I think that if people could come into this business understanding that this job exists, then it could just allow for maybe like people who want to be in that position, and they'll be in those positions longer, and it will add and be able to sustain the health and integrity and level of excellence expected in these productions.
I think that's really important, Antoine. I think you've hit on something that is a very, very important thing, because as you say, in that kind of the swing job, you would need to have a particular type of temperament to cope with that, especially as a vacation swing, because I'd imagine that, as you say, that the contracts could be really short and they could be all over the place. And it isn't just the talent that's needed, it's the correct mindset as well. And I think that you're absolutely right, that people have to be taught that. And if productions are going to have a strong, sustainable ensemble, then people like you to train that area would be very highly prized, I would think.
I agree.
I agree too. There you go. Anybody watching in the theatre, we've got a trainer right here.
Well, you definitely have to come back as well then if you're going to be pushing this.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
We'll talk to you when you've got your first training school, swing school up and running.
Thank you.
So all about that, all about that. But just going on from there, as we've touched on, your career is moving onwards, and you have written a book, Becoming Black Magic, Becoming Magic, sorry. And you have a
Black Magic is a Oh, I was going to say.
I'm thinking of chocolates.
Well, life is like a
box of chocolates.
One of life's chocolates.
I want a chocolate now. Sorry, I digress. Becoming Magic is the book that you've written, and you're also building a speaking career about that. And I love the fact that on your website you describe yourself, you are a soldier of love, and I really love that. And I'd love to hear more about what is a soldier of love, and tell us more about your book.
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, as our viewers may notice, behind me is this wonderful backdrop. This was a gift from my partner for Christmas. He got this designed for me because he knows that I do, online interviews and speaking engagements, and it has a wonderful travel case. It just all rolls up together, and I can put it in a case and take it with me as I need to. But to get to the question of what is a soldier of love, a soldier of love, the core of that is someone who is curious to know and ask themselves the question, is the love I have for myself enough? And stemming from that question, it's wanting to live a whole life. And how I define a whole life is a life where mistakes can exist, where fear is not debilitating, and where vulnerability is not a weakness. And we as people naturally look outwards for acceptance, support, encouragement, love. And what I've discovered over the course of my adult life, and this includes going to hours and hours and hours of therapy and counseling, that when we are looking outward, we're not really understanding the importance of being connected to ourselves. And when we are looking to someone else or something else to satisfy a void, we'll always be searching, and we'll always be looking for that. And so I was able to connect to what that void was for me. And when I understood all of the ways in which I have shown up for myself and protected myself, like actually protected myself in the hardest of moments in my life, I realized all of the love and acceptance and support that I've been looking for outside of me has been here all along. It's here. And I know that when I wake up in the morning, I'm here. When I go to bed at night, I am here. I have other people in my life that support me and that offer me all of those things. But if all of those people and all those items and what have you were taken away, I know that I am strong enough to wake up every day and say, I love who I am. I love where I am. And I forgive and have compassion for the things that I have done in my life without needing it from anyone else that exists. They can add to that. However, they are not the source of that. And so that's how I define being a soldier of love, that you are so secure that you are the source and the greatest source of love in your life, that everyone else supports that. You don't need it. Like, you don't, it's not a matter of, if this person leaves, if this job leaves, I fall apart, then my world is shattered. It can be hard and devastating, but you'll know, hey, I've looked at these other hardships I've experienced in my life, and I have picked myself up, and there have been people to support me. But I think what so many of us overlook is that we have to make the choice to make the first step. We have to say, I want something better. I want to change. And then we seek the people to make that happen. It's not a matter of someone coming in and picking us up, because if we don't want to be picked up, I mean, look at kids when they have fits and tantrums, they go limp because they've made the choice to go limp. But when we make the choice to stand up and be secure in ourselves, other people can support that.
I think that's a really, really powerful thing, Raimone. And I think it's with all the outside distractions and things that are in our lives at the moment, you know, that the world moves so fast, and with the dawn of the internet and, you know, Facebook and Instagram and everybody trying to push their perfect lives in your face, you know, I think that some people, it's quite a problem now that people struggle with loving themselves and being really that secure in themselves. Do you think that's got worse with social media?
I think it is intensified. You know, I think we are all very good at, I think we've all been very good at kind of masking and offering some sort of filter to our lives, either by what we withhold within ourselves. And at the end of the day, we know what our darkest secret is. We know the thing that we look in the mirror and say, God, that exists for me, or that's the thing I did, or we know what those conversations are for ourselves. And we can put on any type of face we need to as we walk into the world. So I just think it has intensified. And so the conversations that we're having internally are getting louder and louder. And I want to do what I can to adjust those conversations that we're having internally. I want them to be more supportive and more loving and more hopeful.
Mm. Well, I think that's lovely.
Oh, sorry, Melanie. Is this what your book is all about? This whole journey of yours?
Yes, yes, it really is. And because it speaks to the sexual violence I experienced at a very young age, and the effects that had as I became an adult and entered romantic relationships. It speaks to the things that I was pulling in to find that strength and that security. Because one of the first things was Taekwondo. I studied Taekwondo before I ever got into musical theater, and I earned my black belt in 2 years. And so it speaks to, these are the ways in which I worked so hard and kind of walked blindly to find value within myself, and then connecting to, this is how, or this is where I have found value. And it's an ongoing process. It's not a matter of, okay, we're here, the bow is tied and looks beautiful, and we're just going to sit it here on the shelf. It takes work. And I've been in a relationship for almost 4 years, and that's a new type of work. This is the longest relationship I've ever been in with anyone. And that brings its own challenges. But the great thing is that prior to this relationship, I got to a place with myself that is like, okay, I know what I want and deserve in a relationship, and this is the work I want to do with someone. Now I need someone that will be willing to do that work with me. So the book, that's the underlying theme, but it just pulls in different experiences, and it has interviews of people throughout my life, best childhood friends. My family is in the book, people I've known and worked with over the years that share their perspective as well.
You say that you've done many, you've done a TEDx talk and you speak on this subject. What is the best thing that somebody has said to you after reading your book and hearing you speak on the subject? What's the thing that the feedback, or the one thing that's most touched your heart from somebody whose life you have touched through your work?
The first that comes to mind, it's a quote, it's on my website. I spoke at a very large conference a few years ago, and an attendee whom I never met, they never introduced themselves to me, to my knowledge, and they later wrote me an email. And in the email, they said that she had realized in hearing me speak that she had been in a relationship where she experienced sexual violence from her partner. And, I spoke about the ways in which that my own experiences influenced how I behaved in relationships, like being very withholding out of fear of someone misusing my trust or my vulnerability. And she said it was the first time that she was able to actually say to herself, this horrible thing happened to me at the hands of someone else, because she's in a new relationship and she's like, oh, wow, the things you said that you've done in relationships, I'm doing them currently. And for her, it allowed a shift to realize this person that I'm currently with is not the person that harmed me. This current person is offering me the love I deserve. And so that was so powerful to receive that message from her.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's the hardest part of healing, isn't it? I think sometimes is admitting or saying, when you say out loud, or realize the things that you've pushed back because you can't deal with it, or you don't want to deal with it. Once that comes out to the open and you can kind of look it in the face, then you can start the healing process.
Yes.
And it's hard.
It is. It is hard. It's uncomfortable. Oh, it's so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. And it is worth it. It really is worth it. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, it is worth it.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. And it's wonderful that you are inspiring others. So as your career grows, is that what you are now moving more towards, speaking and helping people, or will you still be on the stage for some time yet?
It is what I'm moving towards. And, I've spent 25 years telling other people's stories. And I now want to tell my story with the purpose of empowering others to find strength in their own. Because I carried a lot of shame for a long time. And I just realized I don't have to. And shame thrives in darkness. But when we bring it to light, it loses its power over us. It really does. And I understand the many reasons why people will never speak out or can never speak out. And so for that, since I'm able to, I will.
Mm. Well, I think it's really, really marvelous that you are doing that. We've got probably just about 5 minutes or so remaining. So just before we finish off with our little game that we told you about earlier, what are your top 3 tips for someone coming in the industry? Or if you can't think of 3, just what was the one thing that you wish you had known when you were starting out? What's the most valuable piece of information you could give someone who's looking at a career in musical theatre?
So my top 3 tips, one, I would say start an audition journal. So anytime you go to audition, have a little journal so that afterwards you write down the date, the name of the show or the audition. If you know who was in the room, do that. And the reason I offer that is because you will hear no a lot. And because so much of the world is results oriented, we forget that we forget when we are putting the work in. And so to have that journal, you have proof that you're showing up and you're doing what you need to do to get the job. That's tip number one. Tip number two, know that the only thing you can control is what you bring with you into the room. So that means your entire body, your being, your mind, your spirit. If you are a singer, you have a song, you prepare, be prepared and know what it is. If you're acting and you have a monologue, prepare that and know it to the best of your ability. If you're a dancer, make sure your body is ready and prepared to do what it needs to do in the room, because that is what you can control. And then thirdly, also understand that there are so many things you cannot control when you're auditioning for a show. It could be they're trying to fit existing costumes. You could look like someone they love. You could look like someone they don't like. It could be a number of things and you have no control over that. So understand that that also exists and don't give that any more energy than you need to.
Good practical tips.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And what would you say, looking back on your journey, what was the one thing that you wish you'd known when you were starting out right at the beginning, if there's one thing?
Oh, goodness.
Well, what about rejection? You know, they say you shouldn't take rejection personally. But doesn't that really hammer at your self-esteem, being in the industry that you're in?
It can. And I don't know, maybe I just have an abundance of self-esteem. Because hearing no, like this is a no for this thing. It did not mean it was a no for the whole goal I had. It was like, this particular opportunity is a no, and there are other opportunities that I will go for, and then I'll find the yes. Goodness, I've thought about this question a lot. Like, what is one thing I wish that I knew before? And I think
I'm speechless.
I know. I guess if anything, here we go. When you hear the most impactful no, because you're going to hear a lot of no's, but many of them will be very impactful. Allow yourself time to grieve that loss and then decide what your next step is and move towards that next step. Like, don't just like, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore that. But because if you feel it, if it's really resonating with you, allow yourself time to grieve what that is so that it doesn't get in your way for the next thing, that you don't carry that energy with you.
I think that's important, not just for your line of work, but for everybody, you know, to process a rejection or whatever, and decide to move forward. So I think we can hold on to things a little bit too long, and we need to really focus on what's important to us and what we need going forward. So I think that's really, really good point.
Thank you.
Okay, to wrap things up, we've only got a few minutes left. We are going to play the Values Jam game. So anybody tuning in to our episode with Lisa will know all about Values Jam. We're going to shuffle the cards. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Without trying to drop them all over the floor. I'm not going to drop them all over the floor. Shuffle. I'm not very good at shuffling. I'm not a very good cards person. And I'm just going to hold them up, and I'm just going to hover my finger around. If you can see, just tell me to stop, Antoine, and I'll pick a card.
Stop.
All right, what have we got? We have got, oh, this is a good one for our conversation. We've got respect. So this is the value of respect, the respect card. So I'm just going to quickly walk down the questions, and you can tell us what it means to you. Don't have to think too long about it, just whatever comes into your head.
All right.
So what does respect mean to you? What does it look, feel, or sound like?
It looks like a sunrise. It feels like a firm, warm embrace. And it sounds like the wind.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Where have you noticed disrespect?
I've noticed disrespect when the individual is insecure in themselves, so they don't trust others.
Okay. When have you experienced respect?
Ooh, I experience respect when I am at peace with myself and I know my value.
Fantastic. Yeah. How could more respect improve the world?
We'd be willing to help others because we aren't afraid that what we have will be taken by someone else, instead of supporting and realizing we'll all benefit.
If you could ask one question, so ask your own question about respect: who, what, why, where, when, or how. What would your one question be?
Oh, wow. Would you please repeat that question?
Okay. Ask your own question about respect: a who, what, where, when, why, or how type question. So,
Okay.
Julie, give me an example. You know, how do you go about incorporating respectfulness in your daily life, or something like that? But it's your question. What question would you ask about respect? You can ask it to me or Julie or both of us.
I would ask, how do you respect yourself each day of your life in the morning?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Only in the morning.
Only in the morning.
Just to start, this is a great way to start the day.
Ourselves in the afternoon and in
the evening. I respect myself in the mornings. I've just started drinking sort of warm water to get my digestive system flowing. I respected myself at the beginning of the year by giving up alcohol, and I'm doing Fat Club next week. So I'm moving towards my fitness goals, but I'm drinking that cleansing warm water. So that's my daily routine that I've just got into to sort of respect myself and try and restore some harmony in this dear old body of mine.
Wonderful. That's so great. Congratulations.
Okay, well, the last question is, what are you encouraged to do differently about respect as a result of this conversation that we've just had?
I want to know more about how people respect themselves. That's a conversation I want to have more with people in my life.
I think that's a really, really good one, Antoine. So thank you so much. That's literally all we've got time for. So thank you so much for coming on and being our guest today and talking to us about your wonderful acting career on Broadway and your book, and being a soldier of love, because I really, really love that. And I think we need more soldiers of love in the world.
I agree. Thank you both so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much. And we hope you come back again. And as a member of the creatives group, that you will use the group to actually evolve yourself as a performer, but also as an author, a speaker, and somebody who inspires others.
Thank you.
We would love to have you come and talk in our group and inspire some others, and maybe get some of those respect conversations going as well. That would be lovely if you'd like to come back and chat to us.
That'd be great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And this has been Creatives on the Couch with Antuan Raimone. Next week, we'll be on the couch with musician and music producer Aaron Harker. So watch out for that.